Coming to you from the mountains and the plain. The only conservative voices brave enough to push back. This is the Conservative Daily Podcast with Joe Otto.
That's what the Second Amendment was designed to do. If you're going to do something to nullify or take away my rights under the Constitution, come get it.
Max McGuire.
When you look at politicians on the left, they need to convince people that they are victims.
A resistance to the resistance. And now your hosts, Joe Otto and Max McGuire.
And welcome back to another edition of the Conservative Daily Podcast. As always, my name is Max McGuire.
And this is Joe Otto.
And today, Joe, we are going to be talking about what everyone's talking about, what everyone in the world is talking about, the coronavirus, or as I like to call it, the Wuhan flu, or you can say the Wuhan virus, or just the Chinese virus. We're going to be talking about this because if you actually look at how the virus is, whether you want to call it designed naturally or intentionally, depending on what your belief is as to how it originated, the way the virus works, it isn't particularly deadly for most Americans, but like most diseases, like most viruses, the elderly and the people who have pre-existing health conditions are the most at risk. There's been a little bit of an overhyping of this, it seems, so far, and that's kind of created this panic in and of itself. And that panic, Joe, is going to have severe consequences in the U.S. economy beyond just the stock market. We've seen the stock market going down. But if people end up staying home and not working and not able to pay their bills, we could see this spiral out of control really quickly, couldn't we?
It kind of already is spiraling out of control, right? So the panic is being created, and it's causing us to it's causing everything to hemorrhage, right? And then the people that saying, "Hey, stay calm. This is nothing to panic about," are the ones that are quietly walking away, saying, "All right, because these people are panicking, I'm going to go ahead and take my money out of the stock market."
Yeah.
And I'm not laughing at them. I'm just laughing because the ridiculousness of it is just, it's past anything I've ever seen, right? The emotional response and what that emotional response is doing to the global economy, I think points to a larger problem, and that is weak leadership. We have very, very, very weak leadership, and we've got if we ever talk about the deep state is having the ability to control, manipulate, or push an economy or country ideology in one direction over another. And I think that's what we're facing today. And if it's not what we're facing today, then why are people making a run on toilet paper, right?
Yeah.
And you will Google it, and there's not anything out there that anyone's talked about or created an article about, even in the media. It's this underpinning of it's almost like playing a telephone game or the gossip channel.
Right? Oh, everyone's running for toilet paper. That must be what you should do in this situation. I mean, I laugh because I've been nuts. I don't want to call myself a prepper, but I have over the years compiled enough ammunition, enough water, enough food, enough basic medical supplies so that if something like this were to happen, me and my family would be able to self-quarantine for a weekend, a week, 2 weeks. And liberals laughed at people like us, Joe, for years, saying, "What are you prepping for? You're stupid. You're an idiot. There's no reason to prep." And here we are facing a respiratory virus, and these fools are out buying toilet paper. Right? You should be buying rice, beans, chicken bouillon if you want to make it taste a little bit better.
You need to stop talking. You know why? Because after everyone said you should be buying food, not toilet paper, do you know what the next run was on?
Yeah, it was food, of
ravioli.
Course. Yeah.
You couldn't go buy any spaghetti noodles. You go there, and all you have is the vegan stuff, which nobody eats anyway.
Yeah. It's always funny when there's these crises. The vegan section of the supermarket always goes untouched.
Still full.
It's still full of the bread.
Oh, you're a vegan? Oh, tell me how that's working out for you.
Yeah, but you just need rice, a carbohydrate. You need some beans for some protein, chicken bouillon to make it taste good. If you have some canned or frozen vegetables to throw in, that's always good.
Okay, but this is not a cooking show.
I know, but when you see people who don't eat sandwiches, right? Who don't have any sandwich fixings in their house, buying loaves and loaves of bread just because someone told them to, right? People who don't usually drink milk, just going and grabbing milk off the shelves. Me and my wife were trying to get wipes for our son because he's 2 years old and we need wipes. Otherwise, it's going to be a horrible self-quarantine. And people are buying all the wipes because the only thing that they care about is I guess having a good bowel movement. I don't know. I feel really bad for people who are new parents right now, because when they leave the hospital, they're being told, okay, just go home and pick up some wipes, pick up some diapers, and the diapers and the wipes are gone. They're nowhere to be found because people are buying them up. I feel bad for those people because I remember how complicated and how terrifying it was as a new parent. I can only imagine what it'd be like to go and get the wipes because you realize you don't have any, and see just the empty store shelves. It'd be terrifying.
Yeah, so I want to give you my thought on this whole coronavirus, right?
Okay.
And I think that if we just take a minute and kind of go back in time a little bit. So they first came out and they said, oh, there's this virus that's happening in China, in a village in China, and that by itself, that was back when it started, where there was like 100 or 200 or 500 cases, right? And there's about 30 people that had died.
Yeah.
And so it was rather convenient that this virus in some remote area of China, right, made its way, through China very quickly, and that we were hearing about it though when it was at its infancy, or at least we thought we were. But if you actually look, the coronavirus quote unquote 19, has actually been something they've been tracking since early 2019, and the strand genome has actually been around since 2012, 2013. But no one's actually talking about that at all. Like, they're not even having a conversation about that, right?
Yeah.
They're just talking about that it's brand new, just came out in December. They found it, a bat transmitted it. Oh, okay, it's not a bat, it's a pig, and oh, we got to stop eating meat. So then the vegans came out and said, oh, this is a perfect opportunity of why you shouldn't eat meat. And then so the propaganda machines of the untruths started very quickly, right, and spun out of control. And then all of a sudden, China's shut down. The coronavirus has now hit multiple countries. Now there's 100 confirmed cases, 200 confirmed cases, 500, 1,000. Now we have 1,300 people that have died as a result of it. And as you get further into the data, the numbers don't have any. They don't have any. There's no substance behind the numbers. Yeah. They just tell us that, hey, there's 100 people and 15 out of 100 over the age of 80 died.
Yeah. No. So that's one of the big takeaways from this is the fatality rate looks so high because there aren't as many people being tested. So Democrats have kind of tried to play this on both ends. They've been talking at both sides of their mouth. They've been criticizing the president for not testing everyone, but then they've been using the fact that there's been low testing to then prop up this high fatality rate and make it like the sky is falling. When we have, I think today I saw that the total was up to 41 people passed away, and half of them were in a single nursing home in the Pacific Northwest. That percentage drops significantly with wider testing, because a lot of people get this disease, get this virus, and they just go about their day. Maybe they have a little bit of cough. They're young enough. At least as of yesterday, I hadn't seen a single report of a child dying from this illness. It affects the elderly, and it affects the immunocompromised and people with other pre-existing conditions. So with wider testing, what's going to reveal is, just alone, if you don't want to discount any loss of life, but if you look aside from that one nursing home in the Pacific Northwest where the disease just went through it like wildfire, if you put that aside, the death rate of people out in the open is remarkably lower than the media is making it out to be.
Well, and it's even, we have to talk even further through what you're actually saying, and that is first confirmed case. And they say, oh, there's one case. Actually, no, there's 50. Now there's 100. It makes the public feel as if it's spreading like wildfire, when in actuality, that's not what's happening. Gestation period of it is 14 days. People had the cold, went in because they had it 2, 3, 4 weeks ago. 20, 30, 50, 100, 200, 500 people had the virus, actually recovered because there was no symptoms. So we're looking at the example of scientifically false data, right? This
Yeah.
is a fake story. This should be actually flagged by all the people on Facebook and all the people on the fact checker as being fake, but they can't see past their nose. They want to create something that is drama filled, because we right now are dealing with what I believe is the biggest pandemic that we've ever seen, and that is the mental midgetness of our society. That we have lost control of a basic amount of maturity, the ability to have basic conversations, and everything is drama filled and or created with some sort of hyperbole in order to create some sort of elicit some sort of reaction, right?
Yeah.
Everything is drama filled. Everyone is a victim. And this is the perfect opportunity to say that you're all going to be victims and you're all going to die. And then when you say that this is ridiculous, this is this is the equivalent of the common flu, and people die of a flu. God forbid people die, but they die of the flu, right? So they're creating this story, and then when that story falls on deaf ears, because I was out last night and the restaurants in the area that I was at were full, thank God, right? But I mean, when that falls on deaf ears, then they say you're not being sensitive enough to the the people that have immunocompromised people in the population, and shame on you because it's not fair to them.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Life's not fair, number one, and number two, it's even with all of those things in mind. Even if you were able to really give you a number of how many people had the flu, because most people don't go to the doctor when they have a flu. They go get a box of Theraflu, they lay in bed, they sleep it off for 72 hours, and they go back to work. That's really what happens, right?
Yeah.
But even if you took into consideration that 15%, it's not 15% in the United States. And by the way, we don't have tests. I mean, we don't have, we don't even have the ability to have any remedies for it, right?
Yeah.
And so we don't have any remedies, and yet in the U.S. it was 15% over in China, right? Which I believe maybe that's the case, maybe it's not, it's probably not. And here it's 3%. So if it's 3% here and it's 15% there, and you mesh all those numbers together and say you got a 15% chance of dying, what are we really dealing with?
Yeah, I mean, at 3%, that puts you right around pertussis and diphtheria, which are obviously diseases that we have vaccinations for, but there are outbreaks of whooping cough in different areas of the United States, in places like Ohio, where you had hundreds of cases of whooping cough, and that poses a serious risk to children and the elderly and people who aren't vaccinated. You didn't see Ohio calling a state of emergency, but yesterday the Ohio state government banned all outside public gatherings because they have 5 confirmed cases in the state. Now, obviously, probably if they had more tests and more people were getting tested, those numbers would be higher. But the official number is 5. They've banned all public gatherings outside. And the state's health officials say, yeah, the number's 5, but we think it's 100,000. That's actually what they said yesterday at their press conference. So tell me how that isn't causing a panic. The numbers they have say 5. But they think it's 100,000, maybe more.
That's my point.
And then they're closing everything.
Inciting riot. They're using this as a political tool. You know, I've told you before that they have weaponized technology against the masses.
Yeah, they have.
Right? So that the 1%, 2%, 3%, the loony left that we have to deal with on a normal basis, get the ability to have the paint dry on some of the dumbest things that could ever touch our society, right? And they continue to weaponize technology to make that look like it's a normal mainstream thing. And frankly, we're letting it happen. We should be rejecting it. I said this yesterday. I go, hey, listen, why don't we have a protest and go down to the State House and say, the protest is not in how you're handling coronavirus. Protest is you're a bunch of clowns. You declare an emergency over a head cold. Then you lie about the statistics to the people, and you say, well, the CDC said, and WHO said. And by the way, the U.S. is passing a legislation to give $8.5 billion. Actually,
it already passed.
$6 billion.
Yeah, already passed.
2.5
last week. Yeah.
Anywhere there is money or power to be gained, I don't care where we are in government, if there's money or power to be gained, we are going to face propaganda.
Yeah,
We're in the middle of it right now.
Yeah,
I got $8.5 billion out of the U.S. Let's keep this going. Maybe we get another $8 billion. And who do you think benefits from that $8.5 billion?
Yeah.
Who?
Yeah.
Who? Actually, it's who?
It's
who?
the people and the donors, the corporate donors behind these politicians. Here's a perfect example. And I'm going to be on OAN tonight talking about this. Nancy Pelosi last week, when they were pushing that bill through, she tried to include a provision that would have basically said that any health clinic that asked for federal reimbursement for any type of procedure, the government would have to reimburse them. That was designed to basically pull the legs out of something called the Hyde Amendment. Now, this is an amendment that's been added to every single spending bill since 76. And what it says is that the federal government, federal funds, taxpayer money cannot be used to pay for elective abortions. Nancy Pelosi was trying to insert language into that $8.5 billion spending bill that would have pulled the legs out from under the Hyde Amendment and given Planned Parenthood a pathway to get around the Hyde Amendment and to start using taxpayer funds for abortion. Now, you talk about who's benefiting from this. This is Nancy Pelosi and her ilk trying to benefit one of their largest corporate donors, Planned Parenthood. Make no mistake, Planned Parenthood plans to spend $45 million this November on election advertising to support their candidates.
Right. And so we have a issue right now that's happening, right? A panic that's being created by them. And by the way, Bill Mowers came out and said, bring on the recession. Let's ruin people's lives so that we can actually get Trump out of office. This is an entire engineered plan against our country, against the people. That's what this is.
A lot of it is also short selling. People realizing that if they know that the markets are going to keep tanking, they can make a buck. And they know people are going to be panic selling, right? Afraid to lose money. So they'll be selling. So people are basically shorting the market. So that's a lot of it too. People like George Soros, I guarantee, are out there shorting the market right now. But yeah, you mentioned how the left is willing to politicize this and to use this for their gain. I use that example of Nancy Pelosi pushing this Hyde Amendment. It wasn't a repeal, but it was a loophole to get around it. We've also seen, Joe, that Democrats are calling racism over Donald Trump, conservatives, and how they're responding to the Wuhan virus, the Wuhan coronavirus, and the fact that they're calling it the Chinese or Wuhan coronavirus. Let's go.
CNN did it for days.
They did, and we have clips of that. Let's listen to cut one. This is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I don't know if she was drinking or not. This is her basically talking into her cell phone and calling everyone a racist for how they're talking. And, Joe, I kid you not, for not going to eat Chinese food during this whole thing. Let's go to cut one. This is AOC.
Honestly, it sounds almost so silly to say, but there's a lot of restaurants that are feeling the pain of racism, where people are literally not patroning Chinese restaurants. They're not patroning Asian restaurants because of just straight up racism around the coronavirus. So,
oh my gosh.
So first of all, gotta get this out of the way. There's no such thing as patroning. It's you're patronizing a restaurant. Patroning is not a real word. But second of all, lots of different restaurants are feeling the pain, Joe. Lots of different restaurants around the country are seeing fewer tables being filled, and they're having a harder time making payroll. That's not because of racism. It's because the same people stoking these fears are also telling people to avoid contact with anyone in public. So it's, I listen to that and I'm thinking, is that just a one-off? Is that just her? But then we hear another member of the squad. This is Ayanna Pressley. Let's play cut two.
You know, since the beginning of the COVID-19 outbreak, we have seen not only the spreading of the virus, but also a rapid spreading of racism and xenophobia. We have witnessed at the highest levels, in fact, of the Republican Party fanning irresponsibly these flames. One colleague tweeted that everything you need to know about the Chinese coronavirus, unquote. My district is home to nearly 32% foreign-born residents, with more than a quarter immigrating from Asia. This painful rhetoric has consequences. Restaurants across Boston's Chinatown have seen up to an 80% drop in business. And I believe this has everything to do with the rapid spread of misinformation and paranoia. It is critical that we stand against these insightful messages and assuage fear in our communities.
All right, well, let's cut that. Okay.
I,
So, Joe, what do you have to say to this? Because I listen to that, and I can't believe that these people were elected to Congress. Every restaurant is hurting, and they're over here saying that Chinese restaurants are hurting because of racism.
yeah, I have lots of friends that own businesses, right? Small businesses all the way up to large enterprises. And you can see by some of the things that I've said to some of the people out there that are making all of these, creating all of this panic, is that the coronavirus, the COVID-19 will kill people, right? People will die as a result of getting this virus, right? And it's terrible. It's terrible if we lose one person, 0.5%, 1%. Right? If there's a way to stop that from happening, I'm all for it. But there isn't a way to stop that, right? There isn't a way to stop and save everyone, right? But how many lives are going to be adversely affected? How many people are going to be homeless? How many people are going to commit suicide? How many people are going to do something to harm the rest of their family because they lose their job, lose their business, lose their livelihood? Maybe they work 20 years for it. And then all of a sudden, at the end of 20 years, they have nothing to show for it because one swooped in and took away their retirement, and the other swooped in and took away their business, their livelihood. If the only thing that's left after we're done with all of this is big corporations and the government to work for, then we've lost as a nation. And I gotta believe that that's what the left is shooting for. They're looking for a way to take away the ability for you to have something that you can invest in, that you can. The entrepreneurial spirit that has made America great, they're trying to take that away from us. And they're substituting it with guilt. They're trying to guilt normal people. And by the way, just so you know, there are an enormous number of psychopaths, right, in the United States. Yeah. Enormous. Enormous number. I mean, if you read some books, it says that 1 in 10 people is a certifiable psychopath, right? Maybe that's a big number. Maybe it's not a big number.
Or maybe they're sociopaths.
So, or sociopath. I didn't mean to say psychopath. I mean sociopath. I apologize. Thank you for correcting me on air. I appreciate. I actually do appreciate that.
I don't know if either one of those are true, but I hope that it's sociopaths and not psychopaths.
Yeah, it is sociopath. See, even I can make a mistake, but I'm glad we actually called it out here because people are like, I called everybody a psychopath.
Fact check.
All right, fact check. All right. So, but there's statistics out there that say that it's not just 1 in a million, right? Mm-hmm. That is a sociopath. And so sociopaths literally have no conscience. But they prey on the ability of others to have a conscience. Yeah. They prey on the ability for others to feel guilt or feel. Yeah. They take advantage of it. And if you actually go back in history and what the government did as far as tests in the 40s and 50s and 60s, they had these psychological tests that they did in order to create more effective messaging, propaganda, and market. It's been happening for hundreds of years, right? Yeah. But one of the things that they found is that a large portion of the population has this thing called a guilt complex. Like they truly don't want to be seen as a bad person. Mm-hmm. And so the sociopaths out there use that as a tool to take from people who are not a sociopath, right? Because sociopaths, they don't care. They actually don't have any feelings at all, right? They say they have a feeling. On the outside, they smile and they laugh and, I love you, I love you. They don't. They don't love anyone.
It's
right?
about
they love
taking
themselves.
advantage. It's about taking advantage of the people
right.
who do have
and so what we're dealing with now, and it's easy to see, is you have people like Elizabeth Warren, right, who said that she was of Native Indian descent. Well, she is 0.00000 back when basically Jesus roamed the earth, right? Yeah. Way back when. So you have her basically just, it's okay that I lied, right? You have other politicians that literally make up stories all the time. They just make them up and put them out there and say, hey, everyone has xenophobia and everyone's a racist. And they're not going to the restaurants that are Chinese because they actually think that those restaurants are serving us food that's contaminated. And it's all propaganda.
Yeah.
This is literally the tools that they use in propaganda by people who are sociopaths.
Yeah.
People that have no conscience. And they know that the other 90%, let's say that my statistic is right? That psychopaths, just kidding, sociopaths make up 10%.
Mm-hmm.
They use that to influence and move the population towards I better go help a Chinese restaurant because I don't want them to think that I'm a racist.
Yeah.
Right? They are literally trying to move the masses based on this one word, guilt.
Yeah.
And I think that if once we as people start to realize that panic is created by people that have no conscience, they don't have any ability to connect to or care about the well-being of that 90%, I think the easier it'll be for us to come up with a solution to get rid of them, right? And to basically say, look, if you lie to us again, you're out, right? But there's been no consequence up to this point because they are yelling fire in a crowded theater. That's the equivalent of what has happened on the Democrat side, right? And as they see an opportunity, a sociopath, right, Nancy Pelosi, I'm going to drop this spending bill in here so that I can actually kill unborn babies. That's really happening. That is a real thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it actually could be even more sinister than that. Just going back to that briefly, Nancy Pelosi either could have been trying to push this through, or she could have known that it is so egregious. She could have been like floating this as a poison pill to put it in there to stop Republicans from voting for it, either to tank the bill or to get Republicans to vote against it, and then be able to use those votes against Republicans and conservatives when they're running for re-election. Basically, the campaign ad, like, Representative so-and-so voted against the coronavirus. Why does he want your grandmother to die? Like those kinds of ads. So either she wanted this through, which I do think that she and the Democrats wanted this to get through, or if you really go even further, how manipulative she is, you start looking and saying, oh, well, maybe she wanted people to find this. Maybe she wanted conservatives to vote against it. And she wanted to tank the bill or to get them on record against it, to use that against them. That's how manipulative, Joe, these people are. They are willing to play politics with people's lives because as much of an overreaction as we say it is, this virus will be dangerous to a lot of people, right? And there are elements of these spending bills that will help protect Americans. Even if we think that this overreaction is too much, there are elements here that will protect people. For her to politicize this, I think it's one of the most disgusting things she's ever done. And I realize that's a crazy statement to make given Nancy Pelosi's body of work. But to politicize this, right, I think that is, she crossed a line that I don't think you can possibly overlook.
I don't know how, I'm sitting here trying to figure out, what part of the fence, if I was standing on the fence, which part would I want to get on? The fact that it's blown out of proportion, or the fact that the things that we're doing economically to help those that are disadvantaged by this. My issue is probably standing on the fence with one on both sides. One, they've overblown it, so they need to let the virus die, which, by the way, the half-life here will go away very quickly, and we'll see this kind of fade over the next 30 days anyway, right? Just by the life cycle of the virus itself. Now it'll go dormant, which means it can come back in the fall. So we shouldn't ignore it if we want to create another panic next year, right?
Yeah.
But if we look at just across the board, if we look at some of the things that have been done to kind of stimulate or to give to people who are adversely affected, I don't find that the politicians have a grip on where the pain is going to come from, right? So the idea of doing a payroll abatement till the end of the year, right? Go to zero payroll tax. It's actually not zero payroll tax. It's a zero tax on FICA, right? So Social Security tax, 7.5 for the employer and 7.5 for the employee, right? Mm-hmm. And they're going to abate that. They want to abate that till the end of the year. Now, the Democrats are saying, no, that's a terrible idea. The Republicans are saying, well, let's explore this. But through this kind of stimulus that they're trying to put out there, they're forgetting about the 68% of the people out there that don't work for a big corporation or work for the government, right? And that 68% is the backbone behind every community in the United States. And those businesses are the ones that are suffering dramatically, right? And the people that work for them. So you're talking about people that run restaurants and cookie
Landlords,
shops,
people who own multiple rental properties.
Right.
Yeah. There was Bernie Sanders was out yesterday, and we're going to take a break real quick after this. But Bernie Sanders was giving a speech yesterday where he was advocating the government to pay people's salaries if they're out of work, and for people no longer to have to pay their rent, so that landlords cannot evict them if they can't pay the rent. So basically saying that people would, under his plan, would get paid, but they wouldn't be penalized for not paying their rent. And the way he described it was that this wasn't going to be a tax break for the 1%, a benefit for the 1%. This was going to help the middle class and working people. But under that plan, what do you say to the landlord, someone who has invested their earnings and bought a couple of rental properties, right? And that's how they feed their family. Now, they wouldn't get paid under Bernie Sanders' plan because they're not employees, as you said. And under that kind of plan, people would be forgiven for not paying their rent. Right? So I agree with you that when you just take that approach of we're just going to help businesses or we're just going to help people, you miss out on a huge chunk of the economy that if this keeps getting worse, they will start to feel the pain. So we're going to take a real quick break. And when we come back, we're going to listen to a montage of the mainstream media calling this the Wuhan virus, the Wuhan coronavirus, just to show how they're now how ridiculous it is to cry racism when Republicans use the term. So don't go anywhere. We will be right back.
Ronald Reagan famously said that our freedoms are never more than a generation away from extinction. Conservative Daily exists to make sure that never happens. With our community of 700,000 members, we fight every day to hold Congress's feet to the fire and stop them from surrendering our rights and freedoms. The fight to take this country back is not over. Please join our movement right now by going to conservative-daily.com and clicking the subscribe button to sign up for our free call to action newsletters. We have a chance to save this country, but only if we all work together. Again, this is conservative-daily.com. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button at the top.
Well, we're back from that break. We're talking coronavirus. We're talking the reaction to the coronavirus. We are talking about the overreaction to the coronavirus. And we're talking about the potential economic impacts. Before the break, we were talking a little bit about how AOC and other members of her squad are trying to make this about racism. That if you call the coronavirus the Wuhan virus or the Wuhan coronavirus, or even mention that it's foreign or from China, then you are a bigot, you are a xenophobe, and you're a racist. What's interesting...
But it is from China.
Exactly. It is from China.
All right. I'm just curious.
If you talk to someone in China and you talk about this, chances are they will call it the Wuhan virus because that is where it originated, right? When you look at Ebola, the disease Ebola is named after the Ebola River in, I believe, the Democratic Republic of the Congo. MERS was Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, right? You look at all of these diseases. Spanish flu in 1918, the Spanish flu was from Spain. It is very common for diseases to be named based on where they originate, for them to get that kind of name. So for Democrats now to cry foul and to say that you're a racist, if you dare even make this kind of claim, it's ridiculous. So I want to play this real quick. Actually, it's actually a 2-minute clip because they've been making a lot of these claims. Let's go to cut 3. This is the montage of the mainstream media basically using the terms that they now call racist. Let's go to cut 3.
This is all happening at a time that we're starting to see a message shift here because you're starting to hear the Republicans, especially Trump calling it the Wuhan or the Chinese coronavirus. They're looking for someone to blame.
Concern is growing this morning over an outbreak of a new SARS-like virus in China. At least 6 people have died from the Wuhan coronavirus. The Wuhan coronavirus. The Wuhan coronavirus.
The 34-year-old ophthalmologist diagnosed Saturday with the Wuhan coronavirus.
Wuhan virus.
The Wuhan coronavirus.
The Wuhan coronavirus. What more can you tell us about the similarities or differences between SARS and the Wuhan coronavirus?
The Wuhan coronavirus.
The Wuhan coronavirus in China.
The Wuhan coronavirus.
It keeps going.
Wuhan coronavirus. And the Wuhan coronavirus.
Wuhan coronavirus.
Fears continue to grow over the outbreak of the Wuhan coronavirus.
Wuhan coronavirus. The Wuhan coronavirus. The Wuhan coronavirus. We have new information about how the Wuhan coronavirus is spread.
Tying coronavirus to China and Chinese people isn't just a racist dog whistle. It's a whole racist orchestra. It's a mighty, mighty racist bass tone.
I hear Stephen Miller in this foreign virus, setting up travel bans for the outside invasion of the disease. That's not the way
Chinese coronavirus that they've been
that's
calling
not
the first U.S. case of Chinese coronavirus.
The Chinese coronavirus.
This is coming as the Chinese coronavirus.
China's coronavirus outbreak. China's coronavirus.
Outbreak anxiety. The death toll nearly doubles in China's coronavirus
All
outbreak.
right, we can cut it there.
Coronavirus.
It
It
just goes.
keeps going and
goes.
The
and
best,
goes
the best
and
part
goes.
of that, the best part of that was where, and that's from Media Research Center. They put out really funny montages like that. The best part is when Don Lemon or Don Lemon, whatever you want to say, when Don Lemon is there basically saying it's racist to call it the Chinese coronavirus, and then the next clip of it was him a couple weeks ago calling it the Chinese coronavirus. I mean, these people will politicize anything. We've seen this for years. That any news story they're going to bump up to an 11 on the scale, and they're going to basically try and convince the American people that the sky is falling and it's Trump's fault. Every news story, there has not been a day over the past 3 years where they have not tried to make some story out to be the end of the world. Trump is destroying democracy, whatever you want to say. It is only fitting that they are now doing this, right? They are going to try and use this language to brand Republicans as a racist, even though, as we just heard, the same people now calling it a racist dog whistle are the ones who originated the term. I love that montage, Joe, because it just puts their hypocrisy and in a full view, and it really just shows how opportunistic they are. To whatever it takes, they're going to use whatever's in front of them to try and hurt the president.
Well, and it's not just the president. It's, again, an attack on us. And that is what sociopaths do. They do exactly what they're doing. This is, by the way, this has been set up for decades. This is decades. This is a strategy that's been used forever.
Yeah.
Right? Let's shame people who feel guilt, not for the reality of why they should feel guilt, but just so they can look inside and be introspective and say, I'm not a bad person. Well, I want to say something that would actually make it so this would be an explicit podcast, and we wouldn't get it, but I'm not going to.
Don't do it.
But it sickens me that we're letting sociopaths run our country. They're running. That's weak leadership. Weak leadership is sociopaths. Sociopaths are the definition of weak leadership. So Trump comes out and says, "Hey, look, you guys are clowns. You're absolute clowns." He's not wrong. He also said the coronavirus will be gone by May 1st. You know what? It'll be gone by May 1st. He actually has told us things that are normal in the world of normal. They're normal, right?
Yeah, and he's not making these things up. This is what he's getting from the advisors in government, that as temperatures get warmer, as the air becomes more humid, it is harder for diseases like the coronavirus or the flu to spread through the air, because when you have warmer, humid air, the droplets from a cough or a sneeze don't linger as long, right? I'm here in San Antonio, Texas. It's 80 degrees today. Humidity's over 50%. It's sticky outside. You cough in that kind of weather, or when it gets to 90, 100 with really humid weather, you cough or you sneeze, and a lot of those droplets fall right to the ground. They're not lingering in the air. The air is too saturated with water. Now, they can still survive on surfaces, which is why I think we probably will see cases go on. But as far as like face-to-face transmission, it's going to be harder for these viruses to spread, which is why flu season is in the fall and the winter, and typically not in the summer and the late spring. I mean,
and it ramps up, right?
Yeah.
So it ramps up. You see it hit somewhere around late fall, so end of October, early November, and then it kind of lingers into the months that we're in now.
And there's also the fact that in the
March,
summertime, people aren't huddling indoors, right? You're out and about. You're out going on vacation, doing different activities. You're not huddled together in a school, right, or in office buildings all the time. You're out doing things. So naturally, as the weather gets warmer, people will go outside. I mean, if they're under quarantine, then they won't. But naturally, you'll see the conditions that viruses use to spread and to thrive won't be there anymore. Now, that doesn't mean that the virus will completely go away, but we will have that on our side at the very least to help control this and to help outlast this. But yeah, no, you don't hear people saying that, Joe. You don't hear people, and when Trump does bring that up, they accuse him of lying. That's probably the biggest thing. Trump is sitting up there, and he's basically reading speeches that were written by his speechwriters, but they're using the facts given to him by the CDC and by the health experts, and the mainstream media calls him a liar for it. It's depressing. Because you had people like Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden out there yesterday saying that politicians have no place addressing the public. It should be scientists. And they were making those claims while they were addressing the public, right? They are talking out of both sides of their mouth. They will say anything to hurt Trump, even if it makes themselves look like complete hypocrites. And I mean, if there's any silver lining in this, I think people are finally starting to wake up to it.
Well, I don't think finally they are, but they're being more boisterous about it, right? They're having the conversation. I keep asking myself why. So I just keep doing research. I keep reading. I keep looking into. I even go back in history 50 years as to how these people got into positions where they could influence the people that have consciences, right? And that's really what's happening. I mean, they are swaying young people based on the consciousness that they have. It's not. This isn't a mistake. I mean, what's happening in our country is not a mistake. This Willy Wonka, the Twilight Zone that we're facing today, and not only just this, but in other ways, in other areas, it's not. This isn't something that we should be surprised by, because we've been building and learning about how we can manipulate people who are not sociopaths for decades.
Yeah.
Right? And now that we're at the point where they've infiltrated and or created this cancer across our society, the sociopaths there's a large number of them. And sociopaths literally, they love to take advantage of people at a place that they know that they can actually get them, which is their conscience. Right? So if you want to know where we're at, that's where we're at. We have sociopaths that are running everything. And if we don't get rid of the sociopaths, we're going to have, and actually, I think that maybe that's the next step we take is we just start talking about politicians and we label them. You're a sociopath.
Yeah.
AOC is a sociopath. Nancy Pelosi is a sociopath. Chuck Schumer is a sociopath. Why? Because they don't tell the truth and they try to prey on your conscience. So you have to ignore it. You know you're being manipulated. So if we know that we're being manipulated, let's just tell them, hey, if you want to have a real conversation, Mr. Sociopath, right? Let's have that conversation. But short of having a conversation, Mr. Sociopath, about what reality is and the fact that, hey, don't label everyone a racist. And it's not racist to call it the Wuhan virus because it came from Wuhan.
Yeah.
And by the way, they're doing it in China.
Yeah, they're calling it there.
So I think at some point I keep having these revelations of what I think we should be saying and what we should be talking about. Let's just call them what they are. They're not politicians. They're not leftist loonies. They're sociopaths. We are dealing with an entire society, an entire group of sociopaths.
Yeah.
And by the way, if we start having that conversation with young people to say, hey, they're just preying on your conscience. You have a conscience. But the people that are actually telling you to believe this, they don't. They don't have a conscience.
Yeah. So Trump has just declared a national emergency, which gives him power to take certain steps without Congress, just like he did it on the border wall. Declaring a national emergency let him free up funds to protect the country. This declaration does the same for coronavirus response. And I'm on Twitter just looking around because I think we missed the window to play that live, and it might take a little bit too long to queue it up. but I'm reading what reporters are saying about it, because I think it's that they're trying to push a narrative, right? It used to be that we had two types of reporters in this country: the fact reporters that just called balls and strikes and told you the facts as they were, and you had opinion journalists. Over the last 3 years, the fact reporters have become opinionated, either by just inserting their opinions or by picking and choosing what they cover, picking and choosing the stories they cover and the sources that they pull from to make their claims, right? They might not come out and say, this is my opinion, but when they write an article with only one side represented, it becomes an opinion piece either way. This is a reporter. I don't know anything about her, but her name is Rebecca Ballhaus, and she works for the Wall Street Journal. She's a White House reporter, and she's reporting, and this is a tweet on Twitter that's gaining likes and gaining retweets, and she says, Trump is shaking hands, which the CDC has recommended not to do, at the news conference where he has declared a national emergency over coronavirus. So they are stooping so low as to critique Trump for shaking people's hands. At a news conference, basically introducing CDC officials, shaking their hands, and then giving them the microphone. They're criticizing him for that. I think that if there's any silver lining, I really do hope, and I know that you think that people already know this, but I think there are a lot of people out there who haven't realized it yet, haven't been red-pilled. They haven't been given the red pill yet and woken up. I think that
I don't think they have an opportunity to be woken up. I mean, that's one of the issues that I have, is that when you're in an echo chamber that they've created, they don't have the ability to see reality. This new reality is becoming their reality.
Yeah. I'm hopeful, though, that this could be a red pilling moment. That seeing that the president is doing everything he can, that the CDC is doing everything he can. Listen, it's not Trump's fault that the first batch of tests were not completely reliable. Trump didn't go in there and sabotage the tests, right? Trump didn't build the tests. These are career health officials in the CDC who have been doing this for years, right? It's not, Trump didn't do it. You can say the buck stops here and that he's ultimately responsible, fine, but it's not Trump's doing. But I'm hopeful that the American people can see that, because when you have people like this reporter choosing what to cover, right? She is choosing to focus on his handshaking as if he's stupid. Because you look into that, he's saying it's a national emergency, but even he's not following CDC recommendations when he's shaking hands with the CDC officials. When you see that, when you see people reporters like this pinpointing specific things that they think they can use to make a political point, I think people are waking up to it, because it's been so all over the place with this coronavirus story. We just played it. We just played the clips of one day Don Lemon is calling it the Chinese coronavirus. The next day he's saying it's a racist dog whistle if you use the term. I think people are waking up, because it's been so ridiculous seeing how they've been twisting and warping Trump and other conservatives' words. I really hope that people are waking up this time.
Yeah, well, I think that the amount of waking up that has to happen has to focus on the problem, right? We have to focus on the source of the problem, right? And I've had this conversation. The conversation we're having right now, I've had with multiple people over the last couple of days, and I finally, as I started reading more about how you influence people's conscience, right? Is this book that I read, and I'll come back. Maybe we'll on the next podcast I'll talk about this book. But it talks about the fact that you have to identify first whether or not the person you're having a conversation with has a conscience. Or do they have the ability to even recognize, even if they know that it's reality, that it's morally wrong for them to say some of the things that they're saying, knowing that what they're saying is not true, right?
Yeah.
And the more you get into the psychology behind this, the more you can start to realize that sociopaths don't have a conscience, and they make really good politicians. Sociopaths make great politicians, because as you take the hits, right, it wears you down if you have a conscience. And one of the things you're seeing right now with President Trump is he has a conscience. He has a conscience. He is doing everything he can to help the American people. I do think it's painful for him. I think it's painful for him to hear and see the things that are said about him because of how much he does care for the people.
Yeah,
right?
it is. And the man's a germaphobe. That's well documented, that he hates shaking people's hands. And he's given a lot of interviews about how he hates doing it because he's always been a germaphobe. But he does it because he says that people will look at you weird if you refuse to shake their hand. So he's doing what he knows he needs to do to calm people down. Because if they saw the president come out like Xi in China, right, wearing a mask and not touching anyone, not shaking anyone's hand, if they saw Trump come out with that, they would blow him away for it, right? They'd say Trump is trying to scare the country. Look, Trump must be sick, right? But when he just treats it as business as usual, thank you for coming, shakes your hand, they find a way to slam him for that. It's getting old. It really is getting old. Yeah, I mean, Bill Kristol is out criticizing him. Everyone is just piling on.
He can't win. I mean, President Trump can't win. He can't win because all the left wants to do is seek and destroy. And they make this stuff up. And people, by the way, other people who are sociopaths get on board with that. Other people that are mentally challenged, like just don't have enough brain cells in their head to understand what reality is, get behind it. And then you're having arguments with people who act as if they're savants, when in actuality, they couldn't hold up a paper bag and figure out how to find the bottom of it.
Yeah, they couldn't find their way out of a paper bag. You're right. Oh man, the Monday morning quarterbacking though is really getting out of control. I mean, you have everyone and their mother claims that they could do the job better. But when you look at how Joe Biden handled the swine flu back in 2009, when you see how Joe Biden handled the swine flu back in 2009, the Obama administration had to apologize for the things he was saying out in the country, the misinformation that he was giving the people. The administration actually had to apologize for Joe Biden's falsehoods that he was perpetuating. And now Joe Biden is saying that he's going to come in as the white knight and save us all. It's laughable, as if Bernie Sanders is going to find a way to save us all. I mean, these people wouldn't be inaugurated until January, Joe. They wouldn't be inaugurated until late January. And to say that vote for me, I'm going to save you during a pandemic, they're just trying to take advantage of voters.
Well, I think they're trying to take their eyes off. I mean, if we're looking at the reason behind things, I always like to say Biden endorsed Trump.
Yeah, you can't say that because then you get flagged for fake news.
It's not fake news. He said it. I didn't say it. It was 14 seconds. It was an absolute clip. It actually happened. That actually was said. I didn't make it up. You can hear it from his own, and you could tell that he just doesn't have any sort of mental acuity. We see it, right?
Oh, yeah. We could do a whole podcast on just Joe Biden's gaffes. Actually, I don't think it'd be fair. We'd have to do it on video because a lot of the gaffes are just him creepily sniffing small children. But yeah, we could.
Yeah. Look, I'm of that stuff. Look, I don't get into the petty.
It's not petty. It's creepy. It's creepy as hell.
All right, so he smells kids' head. Maybe
he's apologized. He's apologized for touching people inappropriately. It's completely fair game.
I smell something. Ooh, is that ivory?
Yes, that's what he does. That's what he does.
You smell like ivory. You smell like a baby's head.
That's what he does. You watch these, and he goes up to kiss like a small baby, and you can see him go. You can see it. I don't know what it is, but he does it. Oh, by the way, in case you were wondering, Joe, the Dow Jones Industrial Average ended
1,700 points.
No, 1973 up.
Did it really?
It ended up 9.31%. It rallied after Trump's press conference. He brought up different CEOs to talk about what their companies are doing, and all of those companies shot right up as soon as that happened. So yeah, the Dow ended up just shy of 2,000 points up at the end of the day.
Just shy. 1980.59.
19. Is that what you're saying? Oh, I'm looking at 19.
1,980 and 59. 9.34%.
Google's lying to me. It said 1973.
Yeah.
Oh no, it hasn't closed yet. That's why. Duh. They're still adding to it. Yeah. So I mean, here's the question, Joe. Is it Trump's economy? Because yesterday when the stock market went down, it was Trump's economy. But whenever the stock market rallies, the left says it's Obama's economy. Is this Trump's rally, or is this Obama's rally today?
I don't know. Again, I want to concentrate on the problem, not some of the things that are out there. And I understand we can have a little bit of a laugh on
it's
who's
a laugh
responsible
about it
for what. Yeah,
every time the stock market goes down, the media runs stories that it's Trump's economy. Whenever the stock market goes up, the media runs accounts saying that Trump has inherited this from Obama. It's just what I'm saying, that they pick and choose their narratives to push their agenda.
But why? I mean, we have to get to the why. Like, why do they create these lies? Why do they create this propaganda? And the reality of it is that they are sociopaths. They are absolute 100% sociopaths. And if you're dealing with a sociopath that literally just wants to make up stuff to play to your emotion, to your conscience, man, if you recognize it, it becomes easy, because then you can't get mad at them, right?
Yeah.
Because they recognize that they don't have a conscience. They don't have the ability to comprehend truth. They can make up whatever they want, and they like seeing chaos, right? They like it. They like creating opportunity for themselves, and therefore, if you already know it, then you can't be controlled by it. And I think that's what we have to start talking about, is that a majority of the leftist loonies, if not all of them, are sociopaths. They are, 100% of them, right? Sociopaths. These are people that don't have the ability to do anything other than try to create a guilt complex and to appeal to your consciousness, because they know your conscience, because they know you have one. They know you have one, and they know they don't.
And
so they take from and to take from you what you have and give it to them. They want you to feel guilty so that you'll let those dollars go. That is going to be the one thing that we concentrate on, telling people about that, pointing to it, so that people start understanding why the left is the way the left is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, it's you think that it's easy. You think that it's easy to explain. Democrats do Democrat things, Republicans do Republican things. But there's so much more.
Sociopaths do sociopath things. And by the way, why would they kill kids? Why would they kill babies, right? And justify that behavior, and then play on the conscience of others to say you can't take away a woman's right to choose. I'm not taking away women's rights to choose. You're taking away a baby's right to live.
Yeah.
Right? So the sociopaths don't have the ability to comprehend that. They don't have the ability because they don't have a conscience. They don't have one. So once you understand they don't have a conscience, it becomes really easy to deal with them.
Yeah.
Oh, you think I'm a racist? Oh, okay. Tell me more. I want to go grab some popcorn. I'll be right back.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So as soon as you recognize it, you can combat it by not letting them take advantage of you.
Right.
Yeah. So
100%.
maybe it's as simple as that. Maybe we should start calling people out as we see them.
Sociopath.
Yeah.
That person is a sociopath. 1985-41, by the way. 1,985-41. It's not closed yet.
I'm looking at the S&P right now. S&P is up 9.29%, 230 points.
They follow suit. I mean, if one's going to be up 9%, the other one will be up 9%, unless it's some serious.
Some serious tech bubble.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's about all the time we have for this episode. Is there anything you want to close out with, Joe?
I want to remind everyone here that this is a fight. We're in the middle of a fight. And the fight is not so much for today or tomorrow. It's a fight that we have to fight today for 20 years from now, for 30 years from now. We have to start thinking further into the future, and we have to start thinking about why the left does what they do and making it very clear. That's got to be our clear and concise message.
Yeah.
Is that we're dealing with people who don't have the ability to have a conscience, so they prey on the conscience of those who do. And that's how they actually sway the masses.
Yeah.
Once we know it, once we talk about it, keep repeating it over and over and over again and educating people on that, then those people on the left are less likely to have influence over truth.
Yeah.
And that's all I got.
That's perfect. It's a long-term fight, but in the short term, if you like this content and you want to hear more of it, please make sure that you like this. If you're watching this on YouTube, like and subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. And subscribe to our podcast. You can see it on Podbean. We're on the Google Play Store, and we're on in the Apple Store as well. So again, my name is Max McGuire.
This is Joe Otto.
And remember that the fight to take back our country isn't over, but the only way we can win is if we all do it together.